Hi everyone. So in this video, we want to be talking about this poem, The Latin Deli in Ars Poetica. And specifically, we want to be thinking about the ways in which the poem is using figurative language, the ways in which it is using similes and metaphors to help us get the ideas across. So in this section, in part two here, we really want to be thinking about places where we're finding figurative language and really think about how it's helping to develop some potentially complex ideas. So a couple things before I read the poem, I want to let you know about. You've got this specific document here in the folder with all of my annotations, that is all of my comments here over to the right side. And so I explain a few things about that. And in the title, it says an Ars Poetica. And an Ars Poetica is particularly a kind of a poem that is about what makes a good poem. And we'll revisit that by the time we get to the end. But so the poem is about how you make a good poem. And the Latin deli, a deli is, like we know, like the corner deli. This is specifically one that might cater to people who are from Latin America, but there are other kinds of delis that we might find around the city as well. And so that's just to let us understand something from the title. I won't go through. I'll go through some of these annotations, some of these comments later on. But first, I'm going to read it through, and I won't go through those as I'm reading it. But so I'll just read it straight, and then we'll come through and talk about some of the details that we have here and think about how they're contributing to the overall meaning here, and how is it that we can understand the ways in which metaphors and similes help us understand what's going on in the poem. So let me read it first, and then we'll go through that. So, the Latin Deli and Ars Poetica. Presiding over a Formica counter, plastic mother and child magnetized to the top of an ancient register, the heady mix of smells from the open bins of dried codfish, the green plantains hanging in stalks like votive offerings. She is the patroness of exiles, a woman of no age who is never pretty, who spends her days selling canned memories while listening to the Puerto Ricans complain that it would be cheaper to fly to San Juan than to buy a pound of Bustelo coffee here, and to Cubans perfecting their speech of a glorious return to Havana, where no one has been allowed to die and nothing to change until then, to Mexicans who pass through talking lyrically of Dolores to be made in El Norte, all wanting the comfort of spoken Spanish, to gaze upon the family portrait of her plain, wide face, her ample bosom resting on her plump arms, her look of maternal interest as they speak to her and each other of their dreams and their disillusions, how she smiles understanding when they walk down the narrow aisles of her store, reading the labels of packages aloud as if they were the names of lost lovers, suspiros, merengues, the stale candy of everyone's childhood. She spends her days slicing jamon y queso and wrapping it in wax paper tied with string. Plain ham and cheese that would cost less at the A&P, but it would not satisfy the hunger of the fragile old man, lost in the folds of his winter coat, who brings her lists of items that he reads to her like poetry, or the others whose needs she must divine, conjuring up products from places that now exists only in their hearts, closed ports she must trade with. All right, so again, this is describing a deli. It's a kind of a place you might have been. But we want to think about some of the things that she's doing here. If things get confusing for us, we realize that in a lot of places, what we're doing is we're simply using either metaphors or similes. And if we take them literally, then we don't understand what's going on. But if we understand that they are metaphors and similes, then it makes it easier for us to figure out, oh, so that's ultimately what she's trying to say here. So let's just start out at the beginning. So presiding over a Formica counter. Formica, if you don't know, I've got a picture here. Oh, you can't see it in this. Let me see if I can. I can't make it. If you click on that, you will see a picture that I have here. It's off of the screen now. But Formica is kind of a plastic that's used on kitchen counters, bathroom counters, in a place like a deli, a bodega. It might be used for the counters there. And so it's just a plastic counter. When you open up the document and look at the picture, you'll see it and you'll go, oh, I know what Formica is. So she, presiding over a Formica counter, plastic mother and child magnetized to the top of an ancient register. A couple things. One, notice that when I go through this line, I don't stop. I don't say plastic mother and child magnetized to the top of an ancient register. Sometimes students feel like when we get to the end of a line, you kind of stop, like it's the end of the sentence. But that's not the case. You don't stop, it carries through, the sentence goes through. So it says plastic mother and child magnetized to the top. They are magnetized to the top of an ancient register. And then we can say plastic mother and child. Notice that the mother and child are capitalized here. Capitalization becomes important. Sometimes students forget that when we're used to texting. We forget to capitalize. We capitalize things that shouldn't be capitalized. We don't capitalize things that should be capitalized. But capitalization provides information. So as it says here, mother and child, because mother and child are capitalized, we are talking about a specific mother and child, and that specific mother and child are Jesus and his mother, right? Jesus is the child, and his mother is going to be Mary. And so in this store, there is a plastic mother and child, plastic Jesus and Mary, that is going to be, as it says, magnetized to the top of an ancient register. It's stuck to the top of the register. So you can see that a lot of Latins are going to be Catholic, and they're going to, be kind of openly religious. And so the idea of having that Mary and Jesus on the top of the cash register, it's something that we might see there. So. And so presiding over the Formica counters, who is doing that? It's going to be this woman, and we're going to have to wait a while to understand, to actually get introduced to the woman, but we're just saying somebody, this person, is presiding over this Formica counter where there is a plastic mother and child magnetized to the top of an ancient register. And what else do we see in the store here? It says the heady mix of smells from the open bins of dried codfish, a Latin dish, bacalao, dried and salted codfish that we might have there. The green plantains, if you don't know what plantains are, many of you do, they are like bananas, except they are they're not sweet. So the green plantains hanging in stalks like votive offerings. And so we've got a word like here, and that tells us that we have got a simile, right? And so we should know that we have that. So the plantains are like votive offerings. And so we can say, well, what are votive offerings? I've got the comment here, and it says votive offerings are objects displayed in a sacred place for religious purposes, primarily or generally in order to gain favor with supernatural forces. And as I say here, since the word like is used to say that the green plantains are similar to votive offerings, then this is a simile. And so we can say that these plantains are like votive offerings, like these things that are going to be used for religious purposes. Well, that's odd. They're plantains. They're bananas, right? There's nothing religious specifically about plantains. But what Kofer is doing in this poem is saying that within this store, there is something bigger here, that I want you to think about even things like the bananas, even things like the plantains, as having a kind of a religious significance, because there is something bigger that's going on here. This is a corner store, this is a deli, we can go in and we get some food, but she's saying, there's something more meaningful here. And in order to get us to see that it's more meaningful, she's going to use this kind of figurative language where she's going to say even the plantains, right? Something as basic as a plantain can take on certain religious significance. So the green plantains hang in stalks like votive offerings. And then it says she is the patroness of exiles. Realize that I said right up there at the beginning, presiding over the Formica counter. Who's presiding? To preside over is to kind of be in charge of. Who is in charge of this Formica counter? Who is it? This woman who is, as it says, she is the patroness of exiles. So what does that mean? I've got a comment over here. Where I say patroness is a person who supports with money, gifts, or efforts a person, cause, or charity. So somebody who is going to provide some kind of support either through money or something else to a person or a cause. And as I say here, since she is the patroness of exiles, the woman who is working in the store, that's who is presiding over this counter, the woman who is working in the store. So since she is the patroness of exiles, she is supporting those who have left their home countries, because that's what an exile is. An exile, to be exiled from a place, means to have to leave that place. So here's this woman who's the patroness of exiles. She is kind of supporting these people who have had to leave their countries. Well, who are those people? They're people who came from various places in Latin America. They're living in the United States now, and they come to this store. And so this patroness of exiles gives us a sense that, again, it's going to be a metaphor here because she is the patroness of exiles, starts to say, look, this is just a woman working at a deli, but it means something more, right? She is supporting these people. There's something bigger that's going on here. And so, again, realize through the similes and metaphors, the poet is telling us that what's going on in the store becomes more meaningful than it might seem on the surface. If we look down to the next highlight I have here, it says she's the patroness of exiles. It says she's a woman of no age who is never pretty, who spends her days selling, as I have in the comments here, canned memories. We can say here, if we look over to the right, memories can't be put in a can. You can't can a memory. So literally that doesn't make any sense. But what I say here is she is talking about canned food. And I say that canned food can bring up canned food can bring up strong memories. And since she is making this comparison without using like or as, this is, as we say here, a metaphor. So what does that mean? Is she selling canned memories? Well, the food that she is selling is like a memory. Well, this is the food that comes from their homeland, comes from the place that they're used to. And so when they buy this food and open it up and eat it, it feels like it reminds them of being at home. So that's why they are canned memories. Again, see that that's a metaphor, and she's able to say, kind of condense the idea down. We can understand the sense of, if you aren't if you haven't been home in a long time and you get some food from that place, it might remind you of your home. Since this food comes in cans, she's going to say these are canned memories. And so if we take it literally, canned memories, we put memories in a can. If you take it literally, it doesn't make any sense. But if you take it as a metaphor, it makes perfect sense. And so, again, she is saying that there's something about this deli that is providing something larger for the people who come here. Let's look down a little farther for some other metaphors. She's going to talk about that they all come to gaze on the family portrait of her plain, wide face. And as I say here in the comments, this is comparing her face to a family picture. Since it does not use like or as to make the comparison, it is a, I'll let you answer the question. So they come here to gaze upon the family portrait of her plain, wide face, and so it is just her face. But it seems like a family portrait. What does that do to us? What is that? How might that make the people who come here feel as if they are at home? A family portrait. Your family is related to home, and so it seems like she makes them feel that. She might look like people who are in the family of their customers, right? She is going to remind the people who come into the store of their own family. And so, again, that figurative language here, since if we don't take it literally, it tells us a great deal about how we're supposed to think about this. Later on, down in here, it says they walked down the narrow aisles of her store, reading the labels of packages aloud as if they were the names of lost lovers. I say here, this compares reading the labels out loud to discussing lost lovers, since it uses as. This is a, and I'll let you answer that. And is it a simile or a metaphor? And but we can think about it's just reading the packages, the labels out loud. And it says, as if they're lost lovers. Lost lovers is something very emotional, right? Romantic and emotional, something that becomes really deep and important to people. But these are labels of packages. But if we have not been to our homeland for a while, reading the labels of packages might be incredibly important to us. So it might bring up the same kinds of emotions, or at least similar kinds of emotions, to the names of lost lovers. So keep that in mind there. I'm going to stop this video here because I ran out of time at 15 minutes, and then I'm going to go on to a short video that will take us through the last part of the poem.